Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam Elliott64, and welcome to the RoboCast. I'm joined alongside
Steve the American Killjoy.
And World of Woodrow.
and we are here for the final episode of BattleBots 2020, or at least the main season. There's still Bounty Hunters to do, which we're going to do in a couple of weeks' time. Yes, I know we actually take a little bit of a break after this episode, but I think we've earned it. It's been 14 weeks of
I think us and the robots need to recharge batteries. I think that's a fair point now. I think we all just deserve a little break.
We'd have Shark Week off, and
yes, we didn't get a chance. Didn't get a chance. How could we? Anyway, enough rambling. We have a guest from the episode.
We do.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Matt Vasquez, back, driver and team captain of Whiplash.
You are indeed back.
I like how he says back. He's just like a normal place to be.
I mean, at this point, I think I was, normally at this point I'd say, let's talk about your season so far. The thing is, okay, we spoke about your season so far when we were last on for the Valkyrie fight originally. We actually spoke to you last year for the huge fight, and it was the same result, and obviously you fought Valkyrie again. So, I mean, yeah, what is there to talk about other than how did you feel getting into the top 8 for the third year in a row?
I mean, it's definitely like, okay, we're back in the top 8. Like, don't mess it up this time.
Right, yeah. How many more times will this happen?
Exactly. But, I mean, hopefully many more. But, yeah, it's kind of like, one thing I will say is when we got in our bracket, like round of 32, we looked at our quadrant, and I was like, this is a pretty good quadrant for us. Like, the biggest threat to us is Hydra, and they're not a vertical spinner. So I was like, this is like a nice shot to the semifinals if everything goes well. And everything went about as well as it could have. You know, we found ourselves in a pretty good situation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've joked about, the fact that you've fought two teams that you've already beaten in the past and kind of you expect the same result. But that second Valkyrie fight was probably a little bit closer than it maybe appeared because, they really didn't have a weapon failure until about 2 minutes in this time, and that seemed quite scary.
Yeah, I was just trying to push their weapon to the wall, do whatever I could. And I mean, one thing that was good about it though is the wedge was so solid. I could hit their weapon, 100 times and we would still be fine. So as long as I didn't make any really bad mistake, I felt pretty confident that we were going to win that fight. But they definitely upped their game a lot from our first match, which was it was pretty cool for them to make improvements that big in that short amount of time.
Absolutely, and obviously we'll talk a little bit more about Valkyrie later on for one of their awards, which they ended up picking up at the end of the year. Yeah. But the episode starts off, actually, before that, if you haven't seen the final, now is absolutely the time to click off. I'm sure you have at this point if you're watching this. If you haven't, then why? It's a review, but,
What are you doing here? Find something else to do. There's got to be some other hobbies you have.
Yeah, like watching BattleBots.
Yeah.
There you go.
Fight number 1 is Black Dragon versus Ribbot.
It's fight of the season. I don't even care. I don't even care what you say.
It was something, wasn't it? It was something.
Yeah.
For spectacle alone, I have no idea how this fight goes the way it does. And I don't know what kind of black magic Black Dragon is using, but to be honest, I want some of it.
I mean, it was the t-shirts that they made for last year that you can buy now on the BattleBots store, #NotSpawn. They have a little slogan on the back, which is just burn them all. And
they tried it.
I don't expect them to follow that through with themselves as well for over 2 minutes of the fight.
Yeah. And they didn't even go in with their flamethrower. They didn't even have it on. So they and in the end they still had a flamethrower.
So the thing
imagine how bad it would have been had they had the flamethrower.
My God, gas! I don't even want to think about it.
Wouldn't it?
It would have been that would have been a total loss.
I think the
greatest thing about that fight is they did enough to win the fight in the first 30 seconds and just kind of drove around the rest of the fight on fire and still won.
Yep. That was, I was going to say because for me, if I'm seeing my robot on fire for 2.5 minutes, there's I'm not a particularly skilled driver, I'm going to panic. I'm going to be like, oh my God, my robot's on fire. What's happening? I love the fact at the end of the fight, after they'd clearly won, they're just high-fiving, it's fine. It's just, they're not concerned. They didn't even drive it to the gate. They just left it in the middle of the arena.
But the other thing about it is what could they have done differently when the robot was on fire? Their best bet is just try to win the fight, and it's going to be messed up at the end of the fight, but there's nothing they can do about it. You just gotta let the crew go in there and put it out.
Well, we need extinguisher as a house robot. That's clearly what the answer is here.
Sam, you said that they just stayed in the middle of the arena. I wonder if there's a rule where obviously you've got that line where you can't use flamethrowers outside of because you don't want to risk the
glass mountain or anything. Yeah, true.
So
that's probably why.
I remember there was a fight at Robo Games one year. Maybe it was like Combots. Like the robots Death and Taxes. It was like a multibot, it was like a sort of lighter heavyweight with a lightweight multibot, and the lightweight multibot like caught fire, like just like Black Dragon did, and it was doing the same exact thing. Drove the whole entire fight on fire, like the arena was full of smoke. But they paused the fight halfway through to put the fire out, and after they put the fire out, the robot wouldn't run anymore.
No, you've erasable. That's like we were having that conversation. Was it last week when Fusion fought Tantrum, where. If they go and put the fire, I think it was Zach Lytle that said it. Where if you put the fire out, you're irreversibly changing the future of that fight. So you got to kind of have that balance of like, is there a safety thing? Is it should we count them out preemptively and then try to separate them? And
well, the thing was that they did the same thing last season when Tombstone fought Rotator, didn't they? That in that fight it was very similar. That fact that Tombstone was clearly burning itself to a crisp on the inside, but it was still going, so why would you call the fight? Like, I mean,
in this case we saw like after the fight that they had the section that was on fire was segmented off from everything else. The whole weapon is on a separate system. There's a bulkhead in between that and the rest of the electronic system, so they managed to contain the fire to a degree. Just some good designing, really. But I am a bit sad because in my best Antonio Banderas accent, "Oh, King is dead."
It's a shame for Ribbot, but I do wonder. I don't know if you know, Matt, because we all kind of thought if they'd have gone with the undercut, the result could have been different because obviously they took a lot of damage against uppercut, Yeah. And I do wonder if they were kind of forced into using the vert. I don't know if you could tell us any more.
Yeah, David did tell me that like the horizontal is like done. Like the module is like basically like cracked in half at that point. Like it could not be used again. It was like trashed. Okay. So their only option was the vertical spinner, I think. And I think maybe they probably would have used it anyway, just because Black Dragon's got like so much wedge that I don't know how well they would have fared with the horizontal.
True. I guess they'd have to hope that they would run up their wedge and have their undercutter just snap something. I don't know on their vert. Yeah. It's so hard to say.
Yeah.
But I say credit to Black Dragon for not panicking, keeping the robot going for 3 minutes and progressing to the final 4. Which
there are some really big hits in this fight. I know earlier in the season we discussed the fact that Black Dragon really wasn't getting the bite that they had last year. In this fight, they certainly did.
Massive chunk taken out the bottom of Ribbot.
Yeah. And Ribbot went flying across the arena.
The pre-fire hit. You know what I mean? I think the one that
caused the fire.
So you would think, something obviously shorted, and God.
I think what happened is because like Black Dragon was spinning up, and Ribbot was upside down, so they're spinning downwards. So like Black Dragon caught Ribbot like through him, and I think somewhere in there, Ribbot's weapon like clipped the top plate of Black Dragon or something, and I think it just like pinched a battery and just. That was it.
Yeah, that is true. That Ribbot spent a lot of its time on its head in this fight. Yeah. Really, really did. And that robot does not drive so well on 2 wheels, clearly. I mean, it definitely gets across the arena. We've seen it get its tires ripped off the front, but it's just it's not the same robot. No,
you're absolutely right.
But they did great to get this far.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Did a good job. Top 8 for Ribbot. Absolutely, no shame in that. In only their second season, which, it does take a while to get these robots dialed in. And, Ribbot, credit to them. They did a good job, but Black Dragon on this day was just a little bit too strong for them.
Mm-hmm.
Fight number 2, Endgame and Shatter.
Wow!
Oh boy! Shatter didn't really stand the chance, did they? Bless them. They tried, and they were waggling that stick as even after the hammerhead came off. They were desperately trying to do something.
You've got to commend them that. I think at some point they're thinking, okay, our strategy isn't working here. Let's just full send the axe straight into their weapon, see if something breaks. They did it. It didn't go their way, and it's a shame. But
I've tried to slow-mo this, and you'll notice in one frame the hammerhead is there, and the next it is gone.
You hear it, you do not see it.
You hear a big thunk, don't you? Like it's a very hollow thunk.
It's thunk. clang as it hits the floor somewhere.
Probably I would have done the same thing as Adam, because at that point in the fight, he was losing pretty badly, and he had to do something drastic to have any chance, and that's fire hammer to his weapon. Maybe with some belts.
This is how Chop beat Bite Force.
The robot.
This is true.
You never know.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to discuss, the team themselves actually brought it up. The end game configuration in this fight did not look the prettiest, did it? It was not nice.
Very early BattleBots, very silver. I get why they went for it though, but damn,
a silver box is a silver box.
I know, and I guess we've been kind of trained to say silver boxes are ugly because BattleBots doesn't want them anymore. True. We want colors, so many colors.
Well, they did rectify that later on, didn't they? With the setup, they do slap a bit of paint on the front end.
It just doesn't look right without those front plows, man. It needs those front plows to just look right.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, Endgame was just all business this year.
Yes,
they were
definitely.
we're going to do exactly what we need to do to win. I don't care. We're gonna win every fight.
That self-writer that they had last year with the glasses, which was cool, but it looked like they were more interested in looking good than playing good. But this time, I agree, they were business first, spectacle second.
Yeah.
Which kind of made sense. Obviously, we'll talk about it a little bit later on, but in this fight as well, they won the fight, and you kind of thinking, okay, will they go in for another hit? Because I'm fairly sure, it's the last fight at Shatter's season. I'm fairly sure that Adam, not that he wanted his robot to get written off, of course, but he's very much one to play for the crowd and to always put on a show. And you kind of think, well, maybe he'd let Endgame give it a good whack, but Endgame was just nope, let's leave it.
Jack wasn't having it.
Job done.
Save the robot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw Shatter after this fight in the the Shatter guys pit area, and that billet chassis was just completely twisted, giant holes punched in it. It was nothing I'd ever seen before. It was insane.
There's this great crack in the back, isn't there? There's this great crack in the back. You can see it go straight through not even the HDP, the UHMW armor, and it's it's completely split open the back. And it's just.
Billet builds are interesting because if you really get to that frame and beat the crap out of it, it sometimes could be a total loss. Where you're not able to replace plates on it, and you actually have to go to a whole new frame. I mean, there's design choices to be made there. I mean, we just saw I just saw some pictures of the new duck billet just come recently, and I'm very excited to see that back again. But it's always man, what kind of upkeep do you have to make sure that thing stays square, that it stays in good condition? It's a whole separate problem than just being able to replace parts that get hit.
We've spoken to Hal before, haven't we, about this? And he's always kind of said, he has 3 frames generally, I think he said, and Cobalt last year just tore it straight through it like it was nothing. And he said, no, what can you do? At this point, I'm building something that's as strong as you can possibly make it for the budget of a BattleBot. Even the high end teams, even Hal Rucker, who's built beautiful robots in the past, and there is still a limit. You can't just. It's not a bottomless pit of money. You can't just spend $500,000 or whatever.
It's a lot of material waste too. You're buying these big billets, and there's a lot that isn't going into the final frame. But hey, that's a whole separate conversation.
And that's kind of why we take the exact opposite approach. Our chassis is nice, soft, and juicy, just welded 1/4-inch aluminum, tube. So we take the strategy of just having well placed armor. And if the fight's not going well for us, we're going to need a new chassis the second fight. That's kind of the bottom line. So, but the good thing about it is our chassis are super cheap. I mean, we cut them all just with, power tools, and it's no CNC or not even really, there's minimal water jet in it too. So, and the great thing about it is if we get a giant chunk of our chassis taken out, we could just, get a little handheld bandsaw or angle grinder, cut out the broken sections, just weld in new aluminum sections, and it's good to go.
Job done. So, quicker to repair as well, I imagine. Obviously, especially at this stage of the tournament where you're fighting so often as well, you just kind of got to hope that your robot can repair your robot fast enough. And obviously, we'll get to that a bit later on. But
aluminium, unless you treat it or do something to it, you cannot weld it shut again. I don't think, anyway.
We'd have to ask the Yeti team. They're like the kings of welding aluminum. I remember that being a very constant quote.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, welding aluminum's not fun. Both our chassis is all 60-61. And like, for example, in season 3 when we fought Tombstone and he ripped basically a third of our robot just clean away, we basically rebuilt a third of the robot in the pits and just had the linking guys weld it back together. So the great thing about just having, our aluminum chassis like that is with the welders there, we can basically repair any damage it has, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
But that's endgame through.
It is endgame through. But let's talk about Fight 3, shall we? Let's talk about Fight 3. If everyone's brackets weren't already ripped up and thrown in the bin by this point, Tantrum just had to make sure that it was just stomped into the ground.
How did Aaron keep this from us?
We spoke to Aaron literally last week, and we kind of said, how did you think going into the SawBlaze fight? Oh, we thought we had about a 30% chance of winning, and then what happened here? Because
I want to throw to Steve because your predictions game for the champion of the season has been a bit iffy, shall we say? Right. Who did you predict first, Steve?
All right, wait a minute. I followed you, first of all.
You did. You did. That was a mistake.
Let's back that up. That was a mistake.
We'll just cover this up.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And then Charlie, a good rebuttal, we're in a group together, and he's like, who would you choose for a prediction game? I'm like, Witch Doctor. All right, cool. Gone. And then the night before we watched it, I'm like, all right, so because we did our final, I'm like, all right, you know what, it's got to be SawBlaze, and they're out immediately. So you know what? Don't ever come to me for predictions. I am not your bookie. I will never make you win. It'll never happen.
Can I just say as well? It wasn't even as if it was a close fight. Tantrum dominated SawBlaze.
So good.
Masterclass of driving. It really was.
Yeah. Wowie. I know, obviously, Matt, you can attest to this because obviously you fought SawBlaze right at the start of the season.
Yeah.
What was your kind of reaction watching Tantrum body it around the arena?
I mean, it was pretty incredible. I mean, I could draw a lot of parallels to our fight against Bronco in season 3, where we went in thinking this is a top robot. We're probably going to lose. We'll just go and have fun, whatever. And we won the ground game and won the fight because of it. And that's basically what Tantrum did. They had the ground game dialed in that fight. SawBlaze couldn't do a whole lot. And they just pushed him around, played it kind of safe, and got the win. Well deserved.
Wasn't that the fight that Bronco went in with the boomer quanger things?
Oh yeah.
It was so strange. That setup, it still doesn't make sense to me. But with Tantrum, I mean, it was incredible. I believe I was speaking to a couple of guys who watching it at the same time, and I was basically the front wedge of Tantrum, I believe, is also hinged as well as the wedgelets that they normally have, so they were just getting underneath SawBlaze every single time. The weapon did some great damage as well. We've not really seen that all season, but in this fight, you saw it take that big chunk out the bottom. I think it was a whole panel it took off.
Yeah, one of the bottom plates. I was reading up about the post fight from Team SawBlaze today, and they said the first thing that Tantrum set about doing was to take out the sort of front wedges, sort of bend them up just enough so that they could get the ground game every time.
And, get a catch point.
They did every single time. Every time they drive in, you see them go for that left corner. Every single time, getting under, hitting, getting away again, coming back in, left corner. Just impeccable driving. And, you sort of... I don't know whether Jameson knew what to do or not, because we've seen him in previous fights sort of change tactic and swap it round to be the vertical spinner tactic, but in this one he keeps trying for the same thing for the majority of the fight, and it just doesn't go his way.
It was very strange. I do agree with that. I'm like, because usually he's the tactician. We'll figure out how to make this work. I mean, it gets to a point where you're like, oh, maybe he should drive backwards and with the saw, and turn it into a vert, but Tantrum's still going to get underneath them. They're not going to win that fight.
One thing is that if I was Jameson, I probably would have done the same thing, trying for the same strategy. Yeah. Just because he has an opportunity for a one-shot kill if he does get him pinned, or maybe a two-shot kill. So I may have only taken one good pin, and he kind of almost got one at the very end. Yeah, but, and also for example, when we fought SawBlaze, things weren't going well, and we decided to go backwards, kind of like you were saying, SawBlaze maybe should have tried. But I mean, it kind of got a couple hits, but at the end of the day, that's kind of almost in a way giving up your strategy.
It's desperation, really.
So it's I think Jameson made the right decision sticking with the strategy, and it just didn't go his way.
I mean, there is a point in this fight where he couldn't then do that tactic because
the
Tantrum
weapon
rammed him into the wall with the weapon arm, and the weapon arm got stuck in the upwards position.
Yeah,
that was strange.
Went full Scorpius from a few weeks ago, didn't it?
And I've forgotten what robot it's called now. SawBlaze. SawBlaze is... It really needs that sort of the arm to be on the back because it holds down the front from popping wheelies. So at that point, they're unstable and they're rocking back and forth and popping wheelies all the time, which Jameson alludes to in his write-up as well.
Yeah. I think as well that one of my favourite moments of this fight for me was the bit where Tantrum has SawBlaze against the wall and they can't get off because the wheels are spinning in the air. Tantrum revs up the disc and just goes straight in the back.
Just spanks it.
It doesn't do much in terms of damage, but like just the visual of it was just I'm absolutely claiming that bingo square now because Tantrum, that was literally what Tantrum was designed to do. It was designed to kind of hold people in place, rev up the weapon, and then hit them, and it did it perfectly.
It was very SawBlaze-esque too, because that is SawBlaze's thing. He holds you there, spins up, and then fires the weapon. You
can attest to that because it happened to you.
Exactly.
It's a shame to see SawBlaze go.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But
it's heartbreaking in more ways, for more one personal.
But you can't take it away from Tantrum. I had this down as a dead set, SawBlaze win, and Tantrum just for some reason this season has just got this huge leap forward in evolution, and we'll get to its fight a little bit later on with Endgame, but what may have been this year, because this was a great opportunity for them to win the whole thing. It really was.
Oh yeah, I'm very proud of how far they got. The little orange thing that could.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, your first fight of the night. Hydra, no pressure. The number one seed, and a lot of people have kind of said the most controversial fight of the episode. Yeah. What did you think going into this one?
So I mean, obviously they're the number one seed. Like it's gonna be a hard fight no matter what.
Well, it doesn't mean anything with the moderns. Ones never win, and ones have never won the bracket. So
White Force did.
Wait, was he?
Did they? I thought there were a 3.
White Force was 1 in season 4.
Yeah,
were they?
Last year they were number 1.
All right.
And Tombstone was 1 in 2016. Steve, you're a liar.
Myself out.
For the benefit of the time, Steve has left.
I was mostly glad we weren't fighting a vertical spinner at the end of the day. I was like, okay, Hydra could throw us in the air, but we could probably take, a few, high landings on the floor and, probably survive them. We could self-right. But the main thing is I thought we had a good shot at winning the ground game, or at least having a pretty even ground game, which ended up being true. Like most of the time we were kind of stalemated. Like half the time you get under us, half the time we get under him. And it was really in that way like a driving battle, just considering how equal our ground game was. After we got that first lift in the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, like this, we have a very good shot at winning this fight. The first 10 seconds couldn't have gone any better than they did.
No, absolutely. And I think for the most part, I do agree. Like, I think you're on top of the fight for the majority of it. There was apart from when you were upside down. I know that's very obvious to say that, but there were limited points where Hydra were definitely on top, and I think there was one. Jake made one big mistake in this fight, and I think he could have won the fight then and there. You were kind of in that corner by the entrance gate, and you were upside down, and you could see him lining it up, and he just missed you. And I feel like that was the moment where he lost the fight. I think after that point, you kind of got back into it again, really. Yeah,
no, for sure. And at the end of the fight, I thought we did win. I wasn't 100% sure, but I felt that aggression was pretty equal. They probably won control, and I thought we definitely won damage.
That hit at the end where he kind of ripped the back piece off. There's a bit of armor that gets taken away, and there's a nice big circle at the back, and I think that, for me, was where you won the fight. I think it was very close up to then, but it was pretty much that last 10 seconds really swung it in your favor.
Yeah, I think the damage we did in the first 10 seconds and the last 10 seconds really stuck in the judges' eyes, I think, and that I think those are probably the defining moments in the fight for us, I would say.
Yeah. And this was one of the fights where BattleBots actually shared the scorecards from all the judges, and they all scored at 6-5, and 2 of them happened to go your way.
It was a very close fight. Like, don't get me wrong.
It was.
People say it was quite controversial. I think it was very close. I think the right robot won, but I can see why people would say, okay, Hydra won because they were flipping you about. They did have control of you for good portions of the fight. I think it's just that damage really swung it your way.
See,
this is probably the first fight I will say our spinner made like the deciding difference in the win, which that's never happened before for us. It's always kind of been like a secondary thing, but it really solidified our win in this fight, I think. Without it, we definitely would have lost.
I have many thoughts.
Come on, Devin.
So before we get into the judging bit that I have written thoughts about.
Okay.
There was a statement made before the fight about, I think I've got this right way around. So Jake said that if you're not on top of the fight, Matt, then you can get quite squirrely, I think was his exact expression. I disagree, and I think the squirrely one was probably Jake in this fight, because he missed a lot of flips. When he knows he has to try and get the ground game and he doesn't have that advantage, he starts flipping spontaneously and hoping for the best, and often that's going to pop him off the ground and give away the ground game even. So I think in that context, that rather flew back into his face. Secondly, for the, I don't know how many weeks it is now, but you were the chosen one. Well done for completing the killing of Hydra. Everybody since you just been the chosen one, and yeah. So the judging, I don't think it was that close. I think it. If I
where do you think they where do you think they missed their mark? Was it damage? Was it control?
So damage, I don't think they can give anything to Hydra. The flips that they were getting on Whiplash weren't as big as we saw. Therefore, they're not getting as
count,
much.
Though, that's the thing, because I think Max.
Did they use any of the hazards?
Well, I think Whiplash was flipped into the screws at least once. I want to say.
Yeah, we were in the screws. I think they got us on the screws that one time.
It was on the far side of the arena, wasn't it, from yourselves?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
and even at that point, you getting down from the screws then caused Hydra more damage because you came down with the vertical on top of them, which is absolutely where they don't want to be hit. And they made that clear in the Hypershock fight. Control, I think, could have gone more their way had they taken advantage of
when you're upside down.
And every time that they've managed to get you upside down, they then get stuck on the floor and don't take advantage of it. And I think that's going to take away some control points. They only got 5 flips where previously we've seen 13 or more. Mm-hmm. And then aggression, again, if they're not going after you after they've flipped you, they could get in some good repetitive blows, flip you, so you're struggling to get back up, or getting into a position where once you self-right, they are there to flip you again. I think that's more aggressive, and I think you had more aggression on your side. So when they said it was a split decision, I was very surprised. I didn't think it was.
So what we want to really focus on, I guess, if you're not giving any damage to Hydra, you would have to say whether or not Hydra had done any functional, effective, or defensibility damage to Whiplash. Like that's the thing.
Hydra scores damage by using the hazards, as you said, and I forgot that you went on the screws, or the use of gravity. Yeah. The height of the flips is really where they're going to score more damage points, and because they weren't sort of fully pressurizing enough.
Not what we used to.
They were only doing enough to turn you over, which, you might argue is all they needed to do. They needed to keep you upside down. But once they got you upside down,
What will they do with it?
Yeah, and you managed to get up every single time.
It is one of those where I feel like I can understand where the judges are coming from with regards to the point scoring, but I at least for me at least, the right decision was made at the end of the day, and
certainly
Whiplash goes through.
Yeah.
With that said, I am a little bit gutted that Hydra is going out, because I do feel like, as much as we've kind of bagged on Jake a little bit this year for
it's been kind of the scapegoat for a lot of upsetness.
For those that are uninitiated, and for those that don't like swearing, click off now. The shithousery that Hydra has brought to this competition has been fantastic, and I can't wait to see more this season.
It was funny. Jake, after the whole Hydra fiasco, and everyone was super upset online. He messaged me. He's like, "Man," he's like, "everyone's gonna love you when you beat me." People are still upset though. So
I think Jake has done a really good job of playing the villain this series, and he has.
I hope he does it more. I really. I think people need to. At the end of the day,
Ray's become too friendly.
Well, it's not even that. So for me, It's fighting robots. Like it is genuinely light relief. I'll get on to my thoughts on this a bit later on, but like it is genuinely light relief in a world at the moment which is quite miserable at times. You got to enjoy it, and you can't take it seriously. Like, it is not life and death. It is a bit of at the end of the day, it is a bit of fun. And Jake being the bad guy and stopping Huge from such a game and trash talking Gigabyte and all the stuff with that, it was great fun. And I think
it is as WWE as this show gets.
Yeah, it really is.
Playing characters and really.
And he was great. He was great at it.
Yeah,
and like the only reason he can do that is because he has the robot to back it up.
Exactly.
Like anyone can't just go out there and start like talking trash. Everyone's like, "What are you doing? Like you're not." Yeah. Hydra. He was the number 1 seed, and he was.
He's had 2 undefeated regular seasons. You don't do that by accident.
And his only 2 losses are to yourself met with Whiplash.
Really good competition
as well. It's ridiculous how high end. I'm very excited to see where Hydra goes within the coming years. I feel like they're slowly gathering momentum. It wouldn't surprise me if within the next couple of seasons we see them in the final or even winning BattleBots.
I mean, I have to admit, I called SawBlaze to win. That went well for me since Hypershock went out. But I always sort of looked at Hydra and went, if SawBlaze versus Hydra is a thing in the final, I think Hydra will probably take it. They're lower, they can flip, and SawBlaze doesn't really like being flipped.
Yeah, I was hoping for and I spoke with you two about this. I was hoping for a SawBlaze Whiplash final so we could like tie a bow on the whole series. We end where we start where we what I mean.
First fight, last fight.
Didn't quite happen this time.
The poetry.
Would have been cool, but wasn't meant to be this time.
Nope. Could have got revenge, but hey, you know what? Hey, you get through this time, and
they didn't.
You get to.
They didn't.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. Like, I mean, they kicked our butt in our first fight, and then we end up going further. It just goes to show like the rock paper scissors aspect of all this, and what luck goes into play. And
the level of challenge involved in building a fighting robot. It means that there is no perfect design.
Thank you, whoever that was from Robot Wars Series 8 and 9. Fight number 5, the first of the semi-finals, Tantrum versus Endgame. The little orange speed bump that couldn't quite against Endgame. No. I actually did check in with Aaron after this fight because there was a big explosion that came out of Tantrum, a puff of black smoke, and it was his weapon ESC that went.
Did it catch fire?
No, sorry, Jevin, you can't have that.
Damn
we were thinking, I was thinking like with black smoke. I was wondering if there was
didn't know what it was. We were like, what? I was like,
was there a motor spinning and the magnets exploded? Like that could cause black dust. I don't know, but jeez, that was
weapon ESC.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Ugh.
He said in true Tantrum fashion, and I was just like, because at the start of that fight, it was on.
Don't talk it down that much.
He was under Endgame. Endgame was not winning that fight, and you just got. Oh man!
Imagine a world where Tantrum was in the final.
Tantrum in the final.
Tantrum is just like the little like immovable object. I mean, its drive is crazy powerful. It's stuck to the floor with magnets. It looks like a slot car when it's driving like on the arena floor. So it's it's super controllable. Like it was out pushing Endgame like easily, and just
built like a tungsten.
I mean, when you're building a robot like that compact and with that much stuff going on, that kind of can lead to some problems sometimes. Hence their weapon going up in smoke and all that. But I'm sure they'll have it dialed in, and I'm sure we'll see them in some main events in the coming season.
I feel like the one bad thing about this season for Tantrum, it is one bad thing, is that next season they're going to get absolutely
they're going to get thrown at every
schedule.
I mean, we've said it so many times now, but you tell us that the little bot that had a spatula on it and was flipping burgers in its first series was going to be in the top 4 of BattleBots at some point. We'd have laughed at you, kicked you to the curb, and run off with your lunch money. Yeah. I mean, it's just
huge.
There's been a lot of little surprises like that this time around. You know, and we saw it last episode with Gigabyte where it didn't die, and you're expecting it to break or something like that, and it just goes the whole 3 minutes, getting dropped continuously on its head. It's just incredible.
I think this season has just been full of, like as you said, full of surprises. One that stands out to me was Mammoth versus Huge, in just one of the most entertaining, mind-blowing and crazy fights I've ever seen. there's so much good stuff in this season.
Yeah.
And
really been given a gift.
Yeah,
honestly.
bearing in mind that this season wasn't going to happen for the longest time, and then they managed to do it. They didn't
disappoint, did they?
No COVID cases while they were there, and then to pull out all the stops within a phenomenal series.
Yeah, to film a main series and a side series at the same time as well.
Yeah,
not even that. Like to bite off more than you think. Oh, they're biting off more than they can chew, and you guys
still did it.
The whole production
swallowed it whole.
Yep.
I do want to get back to the fight if I may, a little bit. Endgame didn't really have to do much. As soon as Tantrum's weapon died, I know they still had to knock them over and what have you. And they were under pressure for a little bit, but there was a little rally like in the middle where Tantrum obviously was. I think it lost one of its forks, and it was at that point that basically they just kept getting hit and hit and hit and hit, and it was like 3 or 4 big smacks in a row, and at that point, I don't know what happened to the Shremek, but
that's what I was going to ask. I mean, I wonder if the Shremek must have gone down in those exchanges because
possibly.
Yeah, I think Aaron was saying that it's kind of like wired up with their weapon system. So when the spinner went out, the Self Rider also goes out, and that's what killed them. But
so their drive was still active.
Yeah, the drive was still going, but yeah, I think just Self Rider and weapon were gone.
It's a shame. It is a shame.
Yeah. And another thing to notice is Endgame was not really winning the ground game in this battle, surprisingly. And I think part of that had to do with just Tantrum's shape being so small and compact and having those forks. But also Endgame wasn't running their ideal fork configuration because they also had extra steel armor on the front. They had steel armor behind the fork. So they didn't have the weight for all the wedgelets they normally have. So they kind of sacrificed ground game for armor, and that may have been
more respectful of that weapon.
A
little more respectful of Tantrum's weapon and what it can do.
I know because
it ripped a bottom panel off of SawBlaze in its last fight, and you just you don't expect that from something so compact. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here, but would you have rather fought Tantrum in the final, Matt?
I don't know. I think we would have had a much easier time getting under Tantrum. But, it's really hard to say until it happens. I mean, you never know till you throw them in there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we fight Tantrum next year.
Also, that's a main event in the making, isn't it? Surely. Absolutely. Let's move on to fight number 6 then. We know the results.
That you've ever so rightfully spoiled.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, everyone, watching this review of the final.
You're too deep in it now.
How messed up was Black Dragon before this fight? Because not that I'm taking any credit away from the victory here, because it was a great performance throughout. It didn't seem as if Black Dragon were fighting fit. Would that be fair to say?
I will say they got the robot together, but barely in time. Barely in time. It was to the point where we were the last fight of the night, I think, and we were lined up all day ready to go. They were just scrambling to get the robot together. It got to the point where they had Ribbot and Hydra waiting to be an alternate if they couldn't finish in time. So we were sitting in line with Ribbot and Hydra. Dude. So they were going to throw in either one of them.
Imagine having to fight Hydra again.
Yeah, we would have had to fight Hydra again. I mean, I'm thinking maybe I don't know who they would have thrown in, but they were very close to not finishing in time. They were putting it together on the scale.
That would have been a BattleBots first.
So they barely got it in there, but props to them. They got it running. They got back together, and they were ready for the fight. Barely though.
The weapon motor, or the weapon wasn't spinning as quick as they have done previously. I mean, when they were turned over, they couldn't self-right. I feel, or they weren't trying to. I don't know. What I will say is, Matty Vasquez is a big bully for driving just a perfect game, putting him up against the wall, pretending like your weapon was dead, and then spinning it up to full ready to hit.
We were talking about shithousery earlier.
It was. I couldn't help but smile when you put the spinner back on. I was like,
were you aiming for those belts on that weapon?
Yeah, I was. So we got on the wall, and I was trying to go for the belts, but it's one thing when you're aiming driving forward, but I was aiming while driving backwards for that tiny spot, so it was everything's reversed, and I was like, oh man. And then I kind of accidentally tipped him, and they started falling. I'm like, okay, I just got to swing now. But
you turn the spin. I'm guessing you turn the spinner off again get them up on the screws, and then turn it on again, and then try and do the same, bring it down,
Well, I mean, historically, Whiplash, we were winning that fight. We did plenty of damage with the spinner. Mm-hmm. So I was like, historically, our spinner likes to go up in smoke at about 2.5 minutes of fighting. So I just decided to turn it off and just fight as a lifter, just because I felt they were upside down. We were winning the control battle, and just save a couple motors.
Very smart. Yeah. Very well.
This is why Jevon, we would never win BattleBots. Ignore the fact that we don't have the robot with the minerals to do it. We just wouldn't win. We try and be too fancy.
I think it was not only a masterclass, but we've seen several times this season them talk about you as a driver, Matty, and like how good you are. This was a showcase for just how good driver you are. And
which they also put that little cheeky bit at the beginning, you sitting on your dad's lap, which was that was a cool home video show.
I did half wonder if that was foreshadowing, like they were setting that up as a bit of storytelling. And
well, obviously,
super cool.
Up to this point, this is your best ever performance. You'd never actually made it past the top 4.
Yeah.
How much of a relief was it to actually make it to the final this year? After everything that had gone on.
It was awesome. We were, like I was saying, at the point where I turned off the spinner, I was just survive for the next 2 minutes and we will be in the finals. Just don't do anything dumb. And once we got the decision, won the fight, it was okay, the robot's in pretty good shape. We have minimal repairs. Now we just gotta wait and see what happens.
Yep, absolutely. But before we talk about the final, there's some other stuff we need to talk about. The awards.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think this is the first time I think they've actually shown them.
Last year it was 3 photos on Facebook, and that was all we got. This year,
a little. You got the little. It's the mid ad piece, right?
Discovery tends to do that with their shows, where they have this right at the end. They'll do a little stinger part where they're like, "Hey, this show's coming back," or if you're just flicking through, here, the end's coming, so come watch what we got going for you.
Yeah. There was a nice few moments. Obviously, the most destructive, first of all, was Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Matt, I'm sure you can attest. Once again, you've fought all the big boys this year, and Valkyrie twice. Deserved winner.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Considering I think that decision was mostly made off the rotator fight.
I was going to say,
I think that left a giant impression on everyone, the judges, Greg and Trey.
The judges went in to look at the damage of that fight. I think that was less to do with the decision and more to do with I want to go and see what just happened to Rotator.
I will say Uppercut probably was up there as well. I do feel very bad that they didn't walk away with anything this year, but they'll be back, and I'm sure they'll be.
Their fights were so short,
right?
That's the thing, having a full. That's another thing that went in Valkyrie's favor. That fight went long, so that definitely is a testament not only to their design but for how tough Rotator is. But hey,
Yep. The Founders Award to Scorpios,
very deservedly so.
Definitely,
so this was given for their just commitment to the robot combat community more than anything. And I think I watched a short video that the team made. I do implore you to go and watch it because it's like a history.
I'll put a link in the description.
Where this team has come from, what they do outside of BattleBots,
even
the amount of work that they do for the community. They run summer camps. They've done after school stuff. They do parties. They do all sorts of things. And Zach in the video said that winning this giant bolt, the Founders Award, meant more to him than probably winning the Nutwood, because it's actual recognition for everything that they do for the community, and I think it's thoroughly deservedly won.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big part of it is that their business, Bot Bash, party service, and that got hit super hard by COVID because no one's can have parties or have gatherings, and that's kind of what a business thrives off of. So I think getting that award meant a lot to them, considering that as well.
Big time.
Yep, absolutely.
There was so much a deserved award. We talked to Zach earlier in the season, and it's they're just really nice people. Zach and Diana, they're just really nice people. That whole team, they're just really great people.
Very much deserved. I completely agree.
Yeah. And then
the Newcomer Award
Rusty!
Who else was it going to be? Come on. Rusty captured the imagination.
I do want to know at what point the community decided that Rusty should win that award. I mean, obviously, it had already bought itself a cult following. Following? There we go. That's words that are hard. A cult following before they'd made it to the season. Everybody loved it, even before they had turned up for filming. They showed a little picture at filming. The whole pits loved them. How many teams put them as their favourite robot on their information bit on the BattleBots website?
Yeah. This was all pre us seeing it, pre the world seeing it.
Yeah, and then when the world did see it...
everyone loved it as well.
Everyone loved it. It was thoroughly deserved. I mean, there are some other amazing robots that we've had this season. I mean, Jackpot coming in as a budget build that got through to the 32 was, I mean, astonished all of us. Grabot, good fun. Love the little theme, love his little arms. But
big deal.
Nothing big deal even,
big deal.
Technically
a new robot.
Yeah. But I'm so happy that Rusty...
The lineage is fun.
And I love the fact that they made a little Rusty nut for him as well.
Yeah.
So one thing I will say about Rusty winning that award is they were also a very, very close second place for best design.
Oh,
is
really?
What the production told us. They were like a very close second place.
Yeah.
You bring up the best design award. Obviously, this year has been dedicated to the late Grant Imahara, who obviously passed away. I think it was early 2020, wasn't it? He passed away.
It was July.
It was mid.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it's almost we're coming up on that again.
So it was quite fresh then at the time, which is it's cool. It's cool that BattleBots have really made an effort to kind of acknowledge this and kind of say that this guy was part of the family. And I feel like it's only appropriate that a Hammer won in the.
It might have got a little steamy where I was. I just I really this hit me pretty hard. Because you grew up watching the show. I don't know about you, Matt. And you probably, I don't know if you've ever spoken with him directly. But he seemed just like a genuine, just the guy that you want to hang out with and share stories with. The guy you just want to spend time with and just have a drink or talk about engineering mishaps and all kinds of silly fun stuff and talk about robots.
He was really, to an extent, just like he was a builder. I mean, he competed on BattleBots. He was like kind of the sports ambassador in a way, like our representative kind of to the world. It was, pretty cool.
Yeah,
he's a big part of MythBusters. He was also a member of there was a Star Trek reboot that he was a part of. He got to play Commander Sulu for like a couple episodes for this like web-based Star Trek series. He was okay, but that series has a little bit of a cult following.
Was that the one that they were forced to stop because it
did it get like
cease and desist sort of thing?
Did they get Nintendo'd? You know what I mean?
Was this the Klingon War one?
Yeah,
something to do with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
I'd have to go back and look it up again. But that's what I mean. Like he's a journeyman everywhere, man. And
I say very nice of BattleBots to dedicate the award to him. And I think it's only right that he gets immortalized, if you like, in trophy form. And I think he'll definitely be missed by the community.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then Chomp winning that. I mean, you could give it to a more beautiful robot.
It's like, dead blow from the future, basically.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Dead blow went to the gym over
the fact that Grant, I think, worked on big mechanical stuff, much like Chomp, before he did everything else. And, it's a perfect one. I mean, we called it. Everybody said that it should really go to Chomp because it is just a work of art in engineering, and you can't argue with it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as engineering goes, like no one comes like even close. Like not like there's no competition. No. It's really insane what went into that robot.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a techno games robot. Like it's just something like that you wouldn't see in a robot fighting show. Like, oh, it's got to complete some kind of a task and get across the lane as fast as possible, But no, it's got a hammer attached to it and flamethrowers.
It's wonderful, and I hope we see more of Walker Chomp. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, Time has come.
They've delayed enough.
All the fights have been played out except for one. It is it is Whiplash and Endgame.
I don't quite have aviators. I have very, very horribly taken care of Oakleys, but you know what that'll
do. Talk us through it, Matt, because this, I don't think it entirely went to plan.
No, not quite. I mean, so one thing I will say is I saw the Tantrum fight against Endgame, and I was like, okay, like Tantrum was pretty smart. He kind of like drove around him, made him gyro, and like snuck in the right times and got underneath. And I was like, okay, like if we can do that, we have an okay shot of winning. Like their ground game is like too good. If we go head to head, we're not getting underneath. Like I don't think anyone was really going to get underneath that setup head to head. So I was like, okay, like Tantrum kind of got underneath. Maybe we could do the same thing. But Endgame was very smart, and they learned from that first fight against Tantrum, and they spun their weapon probably like half the speed they were spinning against Tantrum. And they just kind of sat in the middle of the arena and just faced us and made sure not to lift up, you know, the sides of the robot or anything. And I was like, okay, like that's not good.
That first like 30 seconds was really cautious, like from both of you. Like you could see you like circling around trying to find the opening, as you said. But like Endgame, as you said, they weren't biting, were they? They just kept.
I mean,
that front.
Exactly. There's a moment in this where they in the edit they cut, and you hear Chris say, "So we're now a minute into the fight," and you're like, "Oh wow, this has been going a while."
Well, like I mean, at some point we got to engage. Like we can drive around them, but they're not going to move because you know, they're very determined with their
sides. We're not open for business.
Stop counting him out.
Yeah. And like at some point, like I mean, I didn't let it get to this point, but they will like make you engage. Like otherwise, you're just like disqualified.
Do you have like a producer's microphone in your ear saying, "Hey, hello"? Please.
It's a fight.
It's a fight. This is for television.
I mean, technically, yes, because I believe one of the refs is an executive producer, isn't he?
I know.
That's a question for the internet.
Yeah.
Comments, let us know.
Internet.
Not 100%
Keyboard
clear on all the
warriors.
positions, but yeah, like I drove around them a little bit, and at some point I'm like, okay, we got to engage, like try to sneak into a corner or something, but like they just plowed straight into us, wedged under us, and they got us in the screws, and I was like, okay, like we're basically like, they can do whatever they want with us at this point. I just kind of got to like wait it out. And they were getting like deeper and deeper into like the center of our robot. And I was like, okay, now we got to escape somehow. Yeah. So at that point, I brought the arm like down to the top of the spinner just to try to like get out of there. Because like had they gotten much deeper in any direction, like it could have been, you know, a lot worse than it was, believe it or not.
And that's the thing with your robot, where like it's kind of made in two pods and you have a weapon kind of connecting the two together a little bit, kind of, where there's that open slot in the middle. And man, Endgame went right down your throat.
It was sort of, I never thought I would see a vertical spinner, like a normal vertical spinner, in massive air quotes there, do the same level of damage as something like Cobalt that has a weapon that can shred properly. I mean,
it was chewing through,
underside. There was just a massive bite after bite after bite, and it was just getting deeper and deeper into the sort of that back section of the base of the robot. It was quite gory, really.
Yeah, the hit right before the very end where you get taken out of the arena spectacularly, right in front of Pete. That hit with Endgame, you can actually see the scrape being created by that weapon. It just ablating that aluminum away. Oh man.
And like, I mean, like I was saying before, like Whiplash is chassis. I mean, we're not running like a billet chassis, like, you know, Duck or like Shatter or anything. Mm-hmm. Once, like the strategies have well-placed armor. And once you get past that armor, it's like, we're going to need a new robot no matter who we're fighting. Yeah. That's just kind of how it is. Like, that's a sacrifice we have to make when, you know, running two weapons like we do.
Am I right in thinking once they chewed up that section, you couldn't get the arm back down properly?
I think the arm would sink back down, but I think just the spatula was just so bent from that one, like, first hit when they kind of flipped us over and pushed us in the screws. That, like, hit right there bent it pretty bad, and that, I mean, it was not going to be flat to the floor anymore after that.
No.
Yeah. And also when they were pushing us in the screws, they like, oh yeah, what were you saying?
I was going to say that, like, was there any setup that you had? Because obviously we've seen quite a few this year from Whiplash, you know, in terms of, you know, different wedges, different, you know, fork setups. Was there anything you could have done? The lips.
Oh yeah.
Was there anything you could have done? You think, or was this the best outcome? You
this was the best we had. I mean, maybe we could have made something on the spot that would have helped. But I mean, one thing to consider is that, well, we didn't really I mean, we didn't know Endgame had this configuration coming to the event. So like we didn't have a strategy for something like those super long prongs he had out the front.
Sure.
But then the other part of it to take consideration is, I mean, like Tantrum's forks and our forks are roughly the same length, but the difference in reach is that our forks only stick out like 2 inches in front of the lifter spatula. So we really only have about 2 or 3 inches of reach when you consider that. Because like any fork is just going to get right underneath that spatula for the lifter. So like once he nicks that, like we really don't have much of a shot of getting underneath unless we get like directly behind him or something. So yeah, it was really tough matchup.
Yeah, and your sides, I mean, his sides and rear were just not open for business. Like he was facing you the whole time. I mean, yeah, it was kind of wonderful to see the reaction at the end of this fight from the Endgame team. They just exploded when this fight happened, and I can see on your brother Jason's face, like he's disappointed for like 5 seconds and then immediately smiles again. And it's like, oh, it's cool, it's whatever. But like in that moment, you're like, oh man.
I do find it quite incredible that in the season hit by a pandemic where there's only 3 international teams, 2 of them make the final 4 and one of them wins.
Yes,
no, that's
first
crazy.
time we've seen an international champion of BattleBots, I believe.
No, it hasn't. No, it's not true.
Okay,
there's one from the classic years.
And one of them actually is a judge right now on BattleBots, Derek Young. He won Long Beach 99 with middleweight Son of Smashy.
Where does he represent then?
Canada.
Ah,
he came from Canada. Actually, there's a very interesting story of him having to cross the border with complete control and then having to get through customs and them being like, what is this box of parts? They did a whole preview. It was in one of the old BattleBots episodes. I think it was series 2. It was season 2.0, whatever. But it was, I believe it was that, and that he kind of filmed his process of going through customs, trying to get this box of what is this through the border. So
traveling with robot parts is never
especially in the early 2000s in our country.
When people didn't know. Yeah. Well, and of course, because of other reasons, which probably, if we discuss on the internet, would probably be
we'll get
flagged up.
No good.
Yeah.
But I think out of all of the modern series, I'm safe in saying I don't even know about classic series as well.
Yeah, I this is the first modern international champion,
and like outside of the Americas, out of North America, like this is. Quite the moment, really. The fact that Endgame kind of came from, if I'm remembering correctly as well, I'm fairly sure that Death Toll, when they won FMB in 2017, was that team's first robot as well. Like I feel like they're kind of similar to Tantrum in that respect. I think.
I know they did like featherweights in Australia. I think they'd done before, so I think they'd been on the featherweight scene for a little while. But like that was their first heavyweight outing.
Death Toll in Fight My Bot.
Which is incredible when you consider the progression that they've made. They did so well in that first season of BattleBots, had a bit of a lull last year, but this year they've turned up, and credit to them, they've turned up and won.
I think I'm safe in saying first ever win by Uta.
I believe so.
In a final.
Yeah,
like the whole thing, won the whole thing, first one by an out of the arena, and
so
in the arena that doesn't have many out of the arena places.
So, you want to talk about predictions, Sam?
Yes,
you're a little sus.
But I would like to point out that the viewers of the YouTube version of the podcast to RoboCast Newsweek, where I'm fairly sure when we first saw the image of Endgame revealed, I said to you, Jevon, I think this is going to win.
Yeah,
I think you're right there.
And so it came to be. I mean, I'm a bit disappointed because I would have much rather said, "Welcome, Matt Vasquez, BattleBots champion to the RoboCast." I would have loved to have said that, but maybe not. Maybe next year.
Next time.
Charlie of Good Rebuttal would have just been so happy.
He would have been.
Die-hard Whiplash fan. The good thing is, for me at least, I have this weird thing where if you win the series, you're then the one to beat, and I don't want you to win the next one. So if you had have won, Matt, it would have been a real shame.
Yes, and there's another thing I want to talk to you about.
Second place curse.
I'm gonna say it, and I'm sorry, but please break this second place curse. I'm getting tired of talking about it.
So like it's interesting. Like I look at like the bracket and like thinking like, oh, like had like Rotator beaten Endgame, like maybe we would have won the event. Like we definitely wouldn't have fought an Endgame, and I felt pretty good about the other possibilities and matchups. But at the same time, I feel like when you have like a lucky matchup in the finals or semifinals, that's when the second place curse like kicks in, because then you end up going against robots that you didn't have to, and you don't really think you need a plan for because you were the champion. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe losing the final match will make us more competitive, next year.
But, we mentioned next year.
Yeah.
Where does Whiplash go from here? What's going to take you from being the elite robot that you are? Because let's face it, you've only ever lost to Tombstone, to Witch Doctor, to Bite Force, to SawBlaze, and now to Endgame.
It's a real who's who.
Yeah, right.
It's honestly.
What is going to take you from being an elite robot to the champion of BattleBots?
We're just going to try to keep on the trajectory we're on right now. Compared to 2019 to this year, I felt Whiplash was like way better than it was in 2019. Like if those two robots fought, I think it would be no competition that this year's robot would definitely win that fight. But we're just going to keep that going. I feel like the wheels were a great change. Changing the weapon was a great change.
Was Brazil mad that you got their wheels, especially when you beat them with them?
Well, after we beat them, they were like, "We created a monster." I thought that was funny. But we're gonna keep all the things that worked. We're gonna keep like the same chassis, same lifter motors, drive motors, all that. But we'll definitely come back with more configurations and maybe some a little bit more out there, risky configurations for tough opponents.
No point rocks.
Not that type of attachment, but I think it's just about coming more prepared and trying to stay ahead of the game and think about maybe things that didn't go wrong this year that could go wrong in the future, and just trying to stay one step ahead, I guess.
Some nice steel top plates for when you go against SawBlaze.
Oh yeah, that's
got a steel weight from somewhere though.
This is it.
I've had the Whiplash 2021 plans designed for quite a while now, so hopefully we can start building something soon in the hopes of
I'm looking forward to
season 6, hopefully.
Well, yeah. Applications are still currently open. I don't think they're open for much longer. So if you are going to apply, get it done, kids. Basically,
with a responsible adult.
With a responsible.
Building a robot is dangerous and should not be completely.
But irresponsible adult, that'll be even better. It's more fun. With that said,
disposable income.
Yeah, that brings us to the end of BattleBots 2020. For me, I don't think it was quite as high level as maybe the previous season at the start. The tournament was incredible. Like every single fight, I was on the edge of my seat.
Really, if you were going to make that comparison,
you don't want every single fight to be predictable.
Exactly. No. Like last year, we kind of made I kind of made an observation while watching it again. Like in 2019 season, the top 4 seeds were seed 1, seed 2, seed 3, and seed 6. In 2020, the top 4 were 8, 6, 18, and 5, which was it was wild. Like it could have literally gone any way at that top 8. Like I could see reasoning and logic for any of those top 8 winning. It was fantastic, and I will give all the teams credit for putting on an amazing show in such difficult circumstances.
Do you think that was a result of a shorter regular season, though? One less match to kind of split the robots up, maybe. Get them where they're supposed. I mean, in the end of the day, everyone's like, "Oh, the seedings are bad. They're not supposed to be like this," and they got great fights out of it.
I didn't say that at all. I might have done.
Well, this is like the first year I really looked at like the bracket or like the round of 16, and I was like, any robot in here has a good shot at winning. There's no robot that sticks out like they're definitely going to win.
All you need is Bite Force to not be there.
Yeah. So now what we need is somebody. I saw a Twitter post and I can't remember who posted it. But somebody says, "All right, so now we have to have a secret bounty where Bite Force comes out of the woodwork and has to fight Endgame."
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they end up fighting each other next season.
It's going to be either the first main event or it's going to be a main event at some point.
Which four-wheel drive vert is better than the other?
Well, this is the thing. When they fought before, Endgame came very close to beating them.
Yes, and it was.
Probably
I remember that fight because Paul goes to the side of the box to try to. It's like there was a serious brownout. Like it just died.
I think his controller died, didn't it, or something like that? And he had to quickly turn it all on, and literally just before he's counted out, he starts moving again.
Yep, and then almost in apathy, Endgame just gets hit and is upside down, and they have nowhere to get back over, and that's...
Now they have a Shremek.
Of course they do.
Which they never actually used this year.
That's interesting.
Where they put on a Shremek that might actually work for them. They didn't need it.
Something funny about that is before our fight, I noticed they were kind of like hiding the robot a little bit, like doing something. I'm like, I wonder what they're doing over there. And then I saw the robot after. I'm like, it looks the same. Like, I don't know what they did. But after our fight, they showed us on the bottom of the robot, they had covered the bottom of the robot in Whiplash stickers. And they wrote "End me" on the bottom.
Man, and we never got to see it.
Yeah.
God, I hope they put it
out. I've got turned over just once for good TV. God.
So the Kill Saws might have done it, but we saw them a total times 2 this year.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
That's really interesting, and I'm tangenting crazy, but like,
it's the end of the season. We've got nothing else to talk about.
Sam's been trying to end this podcast for the last half an hour.
Listen, it has been quite something this year. Matt, for the second time this year, thank you for your time. It's always great getting your kind of insight because, as I said, you are now our most guested podcaster guest ever.
Sure.
And it's great to see you make it all this way, but it is such a shame you didn't pull it out of the bag. But as I say, I'm sure you'll be back stronger next year.
Oh yeah, we'll be back stronger for sure, and maybe next year will be the year. You never know.
Yeah, and a thank you to everyone guest that we've had this year.
Yeah, to Ed Robinson, to Jonathan Schultz, to Victor Soto, to Craig Danby, to Jeff Waters, who was next, and then it was John Flack, Will Bales, Matt Spurk, Adam Wrigley, yourself, Matt Once, Jen Urchinroda, the Scorpio Skies, Diana Tarleson, and Zach Lytle. And last week it was Aaron Hill and Matt once again. And of course, we can't forget Pete Abramson, can we? Because he was...
Oh, never.
He was the guy.
Same.
He was the guy.
I want to say a big thank you to several people. First of all, to Sam and Steve, who have made me feel very welcome this season.
It's been great having you, Kevin. Thank you.
This was your first year really doing something like this with us. And I mean, you've done your fair share of stuff on your own, and you've done stuff with
Sam. I chucked it in the news, but it never really felt proper me reviewing it there. It was, the news isn't a place for opinions, even though I keep giving them. But secondly, I think all three of us have said at some point this season, like in group chats and whatever, a massive thank you to everybody who has supported the podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We are amazed, thrilled. I mean, Sam, you're nearly up to that 1K subscribers.
I know, it's close. It's close.
If we can get Sam there for the final episode, guys, that's what we want to do. Is get him to 1K for the final of BattleBots 2020.
Nice, yeah, I don't really know what else to add to that other than I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy. I
have been World of Woodrow.
And Matt Vasquez from Whiplash.
And you'll probably see all four of us next season, but certainly the three of us, myself, Jevon and Steve, will be back for BattleBots Bounty Hunters in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you all for watching, listening, and whatever else it is you do with these podcasts, and we'll see you later. Bye for now.
We're in the end game now.
We are in the end game now.
Oh no.